Welcome back everyone to my favorite movies of my lifetime. This is part 2 and we're getting into the years 2011 to 2020. Again, not doing 2021 because none of the movies I've seen so far I have liked that much. But let's get right into it with my pick for 2011, which is Real Steel. This is an underrated movie in my opinion, and I know that it is very cliche, okay? We've seen movies where a father has to reconnect with their son that they're distant from, and we've seen underdog boxing movies before. But yet I still love this movie. It's charming, it's uplifting, the action scenes are so fun to watch. Hugh Jackman carries this movie, as he does with every movie. The CGI is actually really impressive in this movie, even though it's just a random family kids robot boxing movie. And also the music is really phenomenal in this movie. Danny Elfman just went in on the soundtrack for no reason, and it turned out great. His music perfectly assists the movie. The action again is great. It's very uplifting. Great ending too. Getting into the year 2012, this is another year I had to pick multiple movies, so we're going to kick it off with The Avengers. This is my favorite MCU movie. Loki is such a good villain. He came from Thor, and he perfectly fit into this story, and he was awesome. All of the characters are in their prime in this movie. I wasn't tired of Hulk yet, or Thor. They hadn't messed them up in Ragnarok or Infinity War yet. So Cap, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, they're all perfect in this movie. I love the conflict and the tension between everyone. The action is great. The soundtrack is great. And a standout for me is Bruce Banner in this movie. I like that he's so serious. He really does feel like a ticking time bomb, and that's how Bruce Banner should feel in my opinion. I haven't read any of the comics, but I just love how he's angry. He really is angry all the time, and you never know what's going to happen with him. So yes, Avengers, one of my favorite movies from 2012. My next pick for 2012 is End of Watch, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Pena. We focus on these two cops portrayed by them, and their dialogue and their relationship is so fun to watch. You feel for them, you feel emotionally connected to them, and yet you also laugh with them as they have some great banter going on. This movie is very heavy. It invoked more emotion in me than almost any other movie I've seen. I've never had a reaction to a movie quite like I did with this one. I don't want to go into why, but I highly recommend this movie. It feels so authentic and so raw, and it's a fantastic movie. My final pick for the year 2012 is Looper. I watched this maybe about a year ago for the first time, and there were parts I was like, man, this is kind of dragging. But by the end of it, I loved it. They tackle time travel in a really interesting way. The plot is very well done, and they execute the idea of it very, very well in my opinion. It's almost like an original, it's like the OG Deadpool 2. The plot is very similar to Deadpool 2, but it's much more serious, much more dramatic. Bruce Willis, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Emily Blunt are all really great in this movie, and I highly recommend this one as well. It's a great sci-fi action drama. Now with 2013, one of my favorite movies from this year, and one of my favorite movies of all time, is Prisoners. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal again and Hugh Jackman, which I've already talked about both of them in this video. And these guys are absolutely incredible in this movie. It is my favorite roles that they've done. I've seen both of them in quite a few movies, and nothing beats their roles in this one. Their acting is insane. This is a super gripping thriller. You immediately are enthralled with the story. I don't want to spoil what the plot is about, but it's so interesting. I went into this movie blind. I didn't watch the trailers or anything, and I'm so glad I did. I didn't know what to expect, and it just blew me away. The plot is awesome. The whole thriller aspect of it, you feel so engaged. You're tense at moments, and it perfectly invokes that emotion for you because you feel like you're in the situation, just like End of Watch. It feels authentic. You feel like you're almost watching a documentary. And I can't believe that this movie didn't get more praise from the Academy, because all it was nominated for was cinematography. And yet Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal really had the performances of their lives, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. So this is just such an awesome movie. Again, I definitely recommend this one too. 2014 is another year I had to pick multiple entries, and we're going to start with one of my favorite movies of all time. It would be up there with Prisoners, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. This was such a monumental improvement on Rise of the Planet of the Apes, even though Rise was a solid movie on its own. Dawn just took it to such new levels. This is a superb drama. You can say what you want about it being sci-fi or like an action adventure movie, but at its core, this is a drama movie. And you sympathize with all the characters, even though half of them aren't even human beings. I applaud the people that wrote these movies because they managed to make you root for apes, even when they're in situations going against humans. Caesar is fantastic. He's one of my favorite characters of all time. Koba makes for such a great villain. You completely understand his motivation, and so you sympathize with him, but you also are just afraid of him because he's like an embodiment of just pure evil. The CGI is absolutely top-notch, stunning. I can't believe none of the Planet of the Apes reboot trilogy movies were nominated for, well, I think they were nominated for visual effects, but none of them won, which is a travesty in my opinion. But yeah, great visual effects, great story, great characters, an incredible soundtrack by Michael Giacchino. I'm going to be mentioning soundtrack a lot with this YouTube channel in general because I just love film soundtracks, but it's one of my favorite soundtracks I've ever heard. Michael Giacchino did an incredible job with it. And this movie also has one of the most flawless ending scenes ever. I can't say enough about Dawn, and I have a poster of it right there. It's right there. Hopefully that's a testament to how great it is. My next pick for 2014, which is going to be the second of the 3 time-traveling movies I have on this list, plus Prisoner of Azkaban from the last video, it is X-Men Days of Future Past. This does everything right with X-Men. You get the best of the old, the best of the new. You may even say the best of both worlds, as Hannah Montana would say. It's just fantastic. They do a great job of balancing the old with the new. The plot is so interesting. There's so many great action scenes in this movie. And X-Men, a lot of times they do have good action scenes, but this movie just knocked it out of the park. The opening scene with the Sentinels when all the X-Men are getting picked off is so cool. Quicksilver is introduced in this movie, and he's fantastic. There's another scene with the Sentinels towards the end, which is so fun to watch. You see all the different X-Men and their powers coming together, but you also just get a great storyline with Logan going back in time, and you see Mystique, and she's a huge focus on this movie, and I think they did such a good job with her character. We also get to see a new side of Professor X. You know, he's been worn down by the events of his life. He's beaten down, he's given up, and he suppresses his powers, and we get to see him be reminded by why he needs to help people and his passion for making the world a better place. A lot of these elements just come together so well. They mesh perfectly, and X-Men Days of Future Past is the best X-Men movie. My third pick for 2014 is Whiplash. This is another amazing drama with interesting characters, superb acting, like J.K. Simmons' role in this movie, which he won an Oscar for, and I think he 100% deserved it. Miles Teller is also right up there with him. He does a great job in this movie, and it's just a great storyline, seeing an overly obsessed artist do whatever it takes to become the best. And then him and his dynamic with a very extreme mentor who says, you know what, I'm not going to applaud you until you do become the best and you do something perfectly. I mean, without flaw. He's very extreme in his methods and his philosophy of how to do something well. And it's such an interesting dynamic. A lot of technical elements in this movie are great, like the cinematography, editing, the soundtrack, and it all comes together beautifully. My final pick for 2014, which is the last time-traveling movie on this list, I think, is Edge of Tomorrow. This is another random sci-fi action movie that just turned out really good, even though people didn't really expect it to. The action is really good, as with most Tom Cruise movies. Tom Cruise is a likable protagonist, as with all Tom Cruise movies. Emily Blunt is really good in this movie. And I like that there's humor involved with this. You know, like going back in time to get it right, trying to make the right steps and avoid danger. It's really interesting to watch, and there's a good mystery with it too. So yeah, Edge of Tomorrow is a really solid flick. Moving on to 2015 and continuing with Tom Cruise, my favorite movie from this year was Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. This is my second favorite Mission Impossible, believe it or not, which I will discuss my favorite one later. And wow, just incredible, incredible action. top tier stunts. You can't beat Tom Cruise when it comes to action and stunts. This movie incorporates new characters like Alec Baldwin and Rebecca Ferguson. Their characters are awesome, likable, and they become good additions to the team later on. It also brings back the character of Luther, and I just absolutely love his character. I love all the Mission Impossibles except for like 1 and 2. So I guess that's 2 of the 6, but 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all awesome to me, and this one is no exception. I love the ending. You know, it becomes a battle of wits, and I like that we get to see Ethan Hunt's intelligence. You know, he proves that not only am I just a great field agent and I can do incredible physical stunts, but I can also be the smartest guy on the planet. And I love how he has that battle of intelligence with Solomon Lane, ends up freeing Benji in the end and traps him. It's such a good finale. And also, the intro to this movie, when I saw it in theaters, it gave me chills. The A400 airplane intro where he gets on the plane, and even just the opening titles gave me goosebumps because they did the music so well. This is another soundtrack that I just absolutely love. So yes, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, favorite movie from 2015. My favorite movie from the year 2016 is Hacksaw Ridge. This is my favorite war movie. I love how personal it feels. We see a focus on Desmond Doss, who was a real guy, and his struggle with his own personal convictions. And I love that because a lot of war movies are like huge scale, and a lot of them are impersonal, which I understand that kind of represents war a little bit better. But I like more personal storylines, and I'm also just biased because of Andrew Garfield. He's awesome in this movie, and I like that we get to see his relationship with the woman he ends up falling in love with, and also his relationship with his dad, his relationship with Vince Vaughn's character, and the respect that he earns from all the soldiers by the end of the movie. It's a really great storyline, a really moving movie as well, and it touched me a lot because when I saw it, there were a lot of veterans in the theater with me, and it was all just like we all had a moment of silence at the end because of how moved we all were by the story. And while, yes, Hacksaw Ridge is a very personal, inspirational story, you also get all those bloody, gory action war movie scenes that you would want from something like this. So it does a great job of balancing both. For the year 2017, I have one pick, but I also have an honorable mention that I'm going to give to It, the 2017 version. I love this movie so much, and it was an incredible in-theater experience for me. I may do a video on that later. But yes, it was great. But my favorite movie from this year is War for the Planet of the Apes. I think Dawn may be a little bit technically better. I think it may be a little bit more objectively, you know, high quality as a film, but I love War. It appeals to my taste because, first of all, we get an incredible opening scene, which is like, it just feels like you're watching a war movie. We see gunfire exchanged, apes throwing arrows and like gas bombs. It's super cool to watch. And then almost immediately, we're just brought into the absolute tragedy that happens. And it makes Caesar go into a bit of a dark side. And I love that we get to see him follow the path of Koba almost, where he wants revenge. And he becomes a very flawed character who's emotionally corrupt. And the apes have to bring him back to his senses and realize, you know what, it's not about revenge. You can't have this emotional attachment. It's about the greater good. And I like that we get to see all the apes come together. To be honest, it's going to sound weird, but I like the kind of Holocaust story to this. It makes me immediately root for people. And it's almost like Toy Story 3. They get trapped in a bad situation with a really bad guy. Also, the bad guy in this is Woody Harrelson. I think he's pretty solid. He's not as good as Koba, but his villain is pretty good. And so the apes have to come together, and it has another breakout scene, which I love. I love the addition of Bad Ape 2. They balance the humor with the very heavy, serious drama that's going on, and it made for a very satisfying conclusion to me. 2018 is the final year that I have multiple entries, and my first entry from this year is A Quiet Place. I like that this is such a small scale, very focused movie. It was so creative how they managed to make everything, like the set, perfectly encapsulate the situation of we have to be extremely quiet. They did such a good job with that. And I also like that since it's so small scale, we get a good focus on the family itself, and you feel attached to each one of the family members. They do such a good job of making you connected to each one. And so while it does give you those horror elements that you want, and it is very creative, it also just brings you in with the family connection. And I love that message of just doing whatever it takes to protect your family and showing the love that you have for them. My next pick for 2018 is Mission Impossible Fallout. This is the most stunning of all of the Mission Impossibles. It has the most over-the-top, insane stunts you'll ever see. We get the halo jump. We get Tom Cruise literally piloting helicopters and like nearly hitting mountains, hanging off the cargo drop or whatever it is. And we also get the best like hand-to-hand combat fight scene ever with that bathroom fight scene. But it's not just the action scenes that make this movie great. We also get incredible emotional moments. I like that Ethan's ex-wife becomes another good part of the story. She comes back. We haven't seen her since, like, I think she has a small cameo in Ghost Protocol. But she comes back in this movie, and it makes the finale so much more meaningful. And there's one moment that I just really love in this movie that we don't get to see in a lot of Mission Impossible movies. It's actually Luther talking to Ilsa about his Ethan's ex-wife, Julia. And you see a different emotional side of Luther that you've never seen before. And he's like almost in tears talking about it. And then she comes back in the end. It makes the conclusion so much more satisfying. My only complaint with this movie is that Henry Cavill is a little bit iffy to me. His acting feels kind of strange in certain parts. But overall, what a stunning movie. The most jaw-dropping action scenes ever, and a really good love story, and a lot of good emotion too. My last entry for the year 2018 is none other than Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I went into this movie expecting it to be like a very symbolic, artsy-fartsy, metaphorical movie with great visuals, but not much focus on character, and boy was I wrong. My brother saw this before I did, and he was like, dude, it gave me goosebumps. We have to go see it. I'll watch it with you again. And man, it was such an amazing experience. The references to old Spider-Man just brought an absolute grin to my face. And it introduced characters that I had never read the comic books of, and yet they were so likable, so charismatic. Miles Morales is one of the greatest protagonists I've ever seen. And then you have his relationship with Peter B. Parker and Gwen Stacy, they're all just so good together. And then the additions of random Spider-Man like Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Ham, and Penny Parker. They're all great. They're all so fun to watch. It gets the humor right. It gets the emotional focus on these characters right. And the visuals are just jaw-dropping. I mean, it's unlike any movie I've ever seen and probably will ever see again. So yes, Into the Spider-Verse is a masterpiece. Also, let's not forget about Kingpin. He was a really solid villain with another great emotional backstory and made the movie even better. For my pick of 2019, this is a movie that I absolutely fell in love with and I had no expectation to. I saw this movie like 3 or 4 times in theaters, and I've seen it 3 or 4 times since it came out. It is Ford versus Ferrari. I was so wrong about this movie. I expected it to be like an Oscar bait, boring, slow-burning drama with like flat characters but good performances, whatever. And I was so wrong. The characters are some of my favorite ever. Ken Miles, portrayed by Christian Bale, is one of my favorite performances of all time, if not my favorite. He's so lovable. He's such a funny character. He's super charismatic. You care about him. You empathize with him. You care about his family. His family's great too, his wife and son. Both great performances by those actors. Matt Damon is also great as Carroll Shelby. There's a ton of great supporting characters. The dialogue is so well written that even though there's not a ton of like super exciting, fast-paced scenes, you're just engaged the entire time. The dialogue, I can't praise it enough. It's laugh out loud at moments, just truly hilarious situations that they get into. And it's also very emotionally engaging too. Ken Miles, again, one of my favorite characters ever. If this is what he was like in real life, I would have loved to meet the guy. It's such a great drama. The ending really surprised me as well. And I will watch this movie many more times in the future. And if you haven't seen it, I demand that you watch it. It's that good. You won't regret it at all. The final year for this video is 2020. And my favorite movie from this year is The Invisible Man. This was another movie like Into the Spider-Verse or Ford versus Ferrari, where I went in with low expectations. And again, I was so wrong and it blew me away. I did not expect this movie to deal with such serious themes, but it does so well and is perfectly interwoven with the main character Cecilia, who is portrayed by Elizabeth Moss. She does an incredible job as this character. And the horror is strange because it's not like really jump scary, or like it doesn't depict like super grotesque images of scary creatures or whatever. And yet it's still a super frightening movie. There are some jaw-dropping, like, holy cow, did that just happen moments. Like, if you've seen this scene, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The scene where Cecilia meets her sister at the dinner table in the restaurant. I mean, such a shocking moment. One of the most shocking moments I've seen in film. There's a lot of good, like, unexpected turns like that scene. And again, such great themes that are dealt with. And Elizabeth Moss is fantastic in this movie. That is going to conclude this epic 2-part series of my favorite movies of my lifetime. Guys, let me know if you agreed with my picks, if you disagreed with them. Let me know what you think should have been on my list from 2000 to 2020. And also, let me know what video you would like to see me do next. I have plans, but if anyone has suggestions, I would love to hear them. And I hope that you all have a great week and get through these Monday blues.